they're going to events and they're not playing in front of college coaches. And the parents are being told, look, hey, we can go here, we're going to go there. Well, if it's not within the calendar window, they're not going anywhere because no coaches are out right now. And that's being told to parents. And parents don't really know because some of them are not educated to do that.
I would say most are not educated. When you say calendar, first, what calendar are you talking about? And number two, where could parents go to find this calendar or these calendars so that they know that they're not being taken advantage of?
So talking about the NCAA recruiting calendar and all, they can go to the NCAA.org's website and you can go through and get a highlight what the quiet period is, what a contact period is, what a live period is. And so you'll know what coaches are being when they're out and about. If you're playing a non-sanctioned event and the following week you're not going anywhere, and why are you doing this? If you're not playing in front of college coaches, you're playing rec ball. You're spending your money. You're going places, putting gas in your car, spending money for hotels, and your child's not being safe. You're playing rec ball. Now, if you want to play rec ball, there's nothing wrong with doing that. If they want to get looked at and get recruited, they have to play in front of college coaches to be safe.
Welcome to another episode of How Tall Will They Be? Again, we're not going to try to answer that question because you can't. People are just lying out here. There's no way to know. But what we are here to do is give you real advice from people who are talking about what they know, not what they heard. We're really excited today to have Coach Art Richmond with us. Coach Art Richmond has coached at Charles Jordan High School in Durham. He's coached St. Augustine College women's basketball team, along with many other stops along the journey. Coach Art, how are you today?
Aaron, I'm doing good today, and I'm glad to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So we'd like to get started by asking everybody on the show, when did you know that you could go far with your sport? When did you know that you were good?
Wow. Probably, I would think back growing up, gosh, I hate to say middle school, but probably like junior high age.
And so what sports did you play growing up?
I feel like an old man saying this, but played football. I actually started playing football out in the street. That's how I learned the game. And played football, basketball, and did track and field.
And so when you got to high school and you're starting to compete seriously, did you still play all three, or how did you narrow it down once you got to high school?
No, I realized that my jump shot was not as good as some of the other players on the court, and so I stopped. I played basketball 1 year back in high school. Then the school system, we were set up on 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So I did basketball 1 year, and I understood that football was my calling, so I stuck with football to track.
Gotcha. And as far as college, how did that go for you? How was your recruiting in high school? How was your college decision? How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I was able to go on an athletic grant aid to, it was Elon College back then, of course, now Elon University.
Okay.
Played there. I was able to start there for 4 years as a strong safety. Recruiting for me, of course, it was way different back then. You don't have the glamour that you do have nowadays with Twitter and everything, but there's a lot.
We got to put a date on back then for the listeners. The listeners got to know. So you got to tell you got to tell the years.
I know. Got to tell my years. We're talking about back in 1985 to 88. I graduated high school.
Okay. And so that would be Elon would be like 88 to 92, 91?
91. 88 to 91 at Elon. Recruiting was not what it is today with Twitter and Facebook, and I know that's an old thing with teenagers nowadays. It wasn't around back then where coaches actually sent you letters to your home, and they actually would come by your home or come by the high school and talk to you a little bit more.
So talk about that process a little, because that sets the baseline for what I'd like to talk about today, which is the changes in recruiting. I'm going to tell a little bit of the end at the beginning right now. So Coach Art has a senior son right now in high school. So he is going through the process as a parent currently. So we will talk about that in a moment, but I want to kind of set that up by talking about the specifics of what it was like in the late 80s when you were getting recruited. What you mentioned, they would come and do letters, but did you have to cut up tape yourself to send to colleges? How did they find out about you?
Well, I was very fortunate. I played for a very, very well-known high school coach out in the state of North Carolina by the name of Kenny Browning. And Coach Browning went on to coach at UNC under Mac Brown. I want to say he was there for maybe 18, 19 years. Mm-hmm. So I was able to play with him when he was a high school coach. And we didn't have the huddle highlights. We had I believe it was the 16 millimeter reels, and things would have to be downloaded to a VHS tape. So you would have to you have to mail out the VHS tape because you couldn't make multiple ones of them. You had that one, maybe two VHS tapes, and you would send that out, wait for it to get back. And unless the coach came by and was able to sit down in the back room and watch that 16 millimeter reel with Coach Brown himself, or he would put out the word for you.
Okay.
So that's how recruiting was back then.
So you're at Elon, and your time is coming to an end as a college player. Were you thinking NFL? Were you thinking, I guess USFL might have wrapped by that point, but were you thinking professional, or were you like, well, football's been fun, it's time for me to move on?
Well, back then we had indoor league is starting up back then. Okay. Arena football was starting up back in Charlotte. I want to say Charlotte. They asked me to go down for a tryout, and I thought about it, and I looked at it, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm playing within 100 yards with no barriers, and you want me to get within 50 yards with barriers and a wall? That's crazy. I think I'm good. Okay. I think I'm ready to go get a job.
Okay.
But I did have the opportunity. Then I had another opportunity to play with the Raleigh-Durham Dragons. There was a semi-pro team that was based out of Raleigh-Durham area, where a lot of guys, former UNC, Duke, NC State players were playing on that. I don't know anything about that. You really weren't getting paid. You had to have your own health insurance, and you had to actually have a full-time job anyway to cover everything. Okay. And you really won't get paid, so that wasn't an option for me either. And then a former Duke player, Emmett Tilley, he played for Duke University, starting linebacker. Then he went to play for the Miami Dolphins. He approached me he said, look, have you ever thought about coaching? And I said, I don't want to coach. I need to go make me some money. Like every young person thinks, and he said, well, just go by and talk to the coach. And I went by and talked to the coach, and he liked me. And then I went and talked to the principal, and I found out that the principal, I'd actually went to junior high. Well, it was 6 through high school with his son. Okay. And his son and I were in the same homeroom. He said, look, go, cut your beard, get a nice cut, and I hire you. Go downtown to do your paperwork. And that's how I got hired. Got started in coaching in 1993.
So was that at Charles Jordan, or where was that?
That was at Charles E. Jordan High School in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay. And this is football?
I actually coached. I was the JV defensive coordinator. I was assistant coach for the varsity. That's just for football. I also coached the freshman basketball team. I was assistant coach for the varsity basketball team, and I did track and field.
You were busy all year long.
Yeah. I wasn't married back then. I was single. Well, I wasn't single. I was dating my to-be wife back then. But I was busy, and I just loved being around coaching. And once I got into it, I really enjoyed working with the young men and everything now. And I still see them to this day.
So now you're the super young coach of all the sports, it sounds like, at Charles Jordan. And this is 1993. So let's talk about some highlights from your time at Charles Jordan, certain players that stood out to you, things that you learned. And now you're also on the other side of the table as it comes to recruiting. So you went through the process of your 16 millimeter tapes and VHS, and you went to Elon. That was great. Now you're on the other side. So let's talk about some notable people, player experiences, as well as what it was like being a coach and dealing with recruiting from that aspect.
Well, I was very fortunate enough to coach basketball, fell more towards basketball initially. And the gentleman, Mike Terrell, he won a couple state championships down at Farmville Central High School. I know everybody hears about them now, but they were winning state championships back in the 80s and 90s. He came up, and he was able to get me around Coach Dean Smith at UNC, and the late Dean Smith and the late Bill Guthridge. So I was able to get time with them, and they able to spend time with Phil Ford up on campus at the Smith Center. So I was able to pick their brains a lot about not just about X and O's, but about how to handle young men and young ladies, because it's all one thing when you come to coaching. So I was able to pick their brain before they passed on while they were still around. And also, I was also able to hang around Coach Mike Krzyzewski's son, because they were him and Tommy Amica, when Tommy Amica was at Duke. They were recruiting a young man. His name was Courtney Alexander.
Okay.
Courtney went on to play at the UVA. Then he transferred out to Fresno State. But I want to say he led the nation in scoring 2 years in a row in basketball. And he actually ended up getting drafted into the NBA. Like, he got traded to the Washington Wizards and was able to play with Michael Jordan on his, might have been the second return when he came out of retirement. So I was able to coach him, which was great. And I was able to travel up to Washington, D.C. and get to spend time, see Michael Jordan, talk to some other players in the NBA setting. He was up there.
So what was it like from a recruiting standpoint, though? You had Courtney Alexander, which was great. Superstar, sounds like. But what about getting your other players recruited who may not have been superstars, but were talented enough to play, maybe some D1, some D2, some D3? How was that for you?
Well, for that right there, Courtney, here's one thing in coaching Courtney that I was able to help some other guys. I understood more on what they need to know when they went to college. I actually remember Tommy Amica came and watched Courtney play, and he said, "Well, Coach, we're gonna bring back Coach K. We're gonna bring Coach back by no problem." And I still remember that conversation to the day when they called back and said they were not going to offer him a scholarship to Duke University. And first question as a coach, because I know the players going to ask me, well, why not? And they said, well, he's not playing very good defense. Something that we've been preaching to him the whole time. And so when I heard that, I understood more. Here's what some coaches are looking for. And I'm talking about on that top tier of teams back then. So I was able to go back and help other guys out and say, look, here are some things you need to work on as a player if you want to be sane. Here are things that coaches are looking for if you want to be sane. They're not looking for you to be hit 20, 25, 30 points a game. This back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. They want you to play defense because your role as a player, it will change. You might hit 20, 25 in a game in high school, but they may ask you to shoot, score 10 to 15 points a game in college. So I was able to help players out that way and let them know here's what coach is looking for. Not to mention also look at what they do academically. Because we had a young man by the name of Matt Holman. Matt Holman could do everything out there. And we pretty much thought that he was going to be the next one going to the ACC. And he could have been an ACC player, but thing that held him back, he did not have the grades to go. So he had to go to a JUCO. He went down there for 2 years. He was the leading scorer. He led the team in scoring, steals, and assists. And then he was able to go play at Troy State. So his scenario, from Courtney's scenario to Matt's scenario, it came down to grades. And Matt listened. He was a very good listener, but his grades did not suit what the coach was looking for. And of course, back then, ACT, you have to take the ACT or SAT, unlike today, where they really don't need it unless they go back and bring it back, the testing part. But you need to have it. Back then, it didn't test very well. So I emphasize that a lot with kids. That's a lot of things I've learned from back then, how the old way was and how to adapt to the new way things are going nowadays.
So let's now talk about how you ended up on the college level coaching, right? It sounds like you had some good success at Charles Jordan. When did you make that transition to college coaching? Why did you make that transition to college coaching?
From Charles Jordan, I went over to Southern Durham High School.
Okay.
And Southern was known as they had a lot of basketball players over there. I came to Southern the year after David Noel had just graduated.
Okay.
He went on to UNC. Then I went to Hillside High School. And we, that year, I worked for Craston Davis. Craston just went to the state championship game down in South Carolina. And then the following year, Craston parted ways. And the next day, I got a phone call from a young lady who was on my coaching staff at Southern with the girls team. And she said, look, the head coach at St. Augustine's wants to speak to you. And I said, I didn't know what about that. Maybe she needs some players. And I went up and had lunch with her. And she said, Coach, I would like to talk to you about coming on my staff. So I'm on the table. She said, what office do you run? So I have the salt shaker, the hot sauce, and a pepper shaker. And I'm doing plays on the table. She said, by the time we got done, she said, Coach, I heard you when you started using the salt and pepper shaker. So that's how I got on at St. Augustine's. My first year I actually volunteered. I volunteered. Okay. So if someone's looking to get into coaching, I would say, look, there's nothing wrong with volunteering. Then the next 2 years, I was a paid assistant. Then the following year after that, the fourth year, I was actually the interim head coach. That's how I got to St. Augustine.
Now you've gone from being a player at Elon, you coached at multiple high schools and helped guys get to college. Now you're a college coach. What is that like, especially as it relates to getting talent, as it relates to going to the high schools and going to the tournaments and picking up players? How did you handle that, and how big of a difference was that from being a high school coach?
It's major difference. It's a learning curve. Because now, at high school, the kids are there. You just got to select what you out of what you have. Mm-hmm. When you go to college, you can kind of have to pick of the litter, and choose and select who you want. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of time on the road, recruiting. I was actually still teaching high school when I coached there, so I would literally get in my car on a Friday, drive to St. Augustine, get the university car, and drive. My recruiting area was the DMV area. Okay. And I spent a lot of time up in Hampton, Virginia. A lot of time in Hampton, Virginia.
Wait a minute. That's Tidewater. Recruiting. That's not DMV. That's not. That's way
I was
out.
Up a little bit higher. I would go up a little bit higher. I was up higher. I was going up into Maryland. I would go up into Maryland, Northern Virginia. Okay. But I spent more time down at Hampton because what the talent I saw there.
Okay.
Makes sense. I built a relationship with those coaches. And I think the reason I was able to build a relationship with those coaches because I was a former high school coach myself. So I understood. Mm-hmm. I understood what they did. I would go watch practices. I would leave early Saturday morning to go watch practice up there, up in Virginia or Maryland. And I understood, well, they just played the game Friday night. I understand the kids tired. Mm-hmm. But you brought them in just because I was there. I was coming up. They would have a practice. They would have open gym just so I could see the young ladies play. And not only did I recruit for basketball, but for the Division II, I was able to recruit for football also and baseball also. So I was able to help the football and baseball coach out.
So even as the women's basketball coach, you were able to just go across sports and say, hey, there's this really talented baseball player, really talented football player. You should go talk to them. Or you were like, hey, I could offer you a scholarship because I know what the coach is looking for.
Yes. I'll sit down many times and just sit down with the football coach and say, look, what are you looking for? What position do you need? And he told me, look, I need a linebacker, I need a lineman. And I said, well, I'm going to a high school football game. I said, I understand football. I've been doing basketball, but I understand football. And I could just tell me what you need, and I'll go look for them, and I'll go hunt them down for you. And that's literally what I did. And I would recommend players to them, whether they wanted them or not. And there was always somebody with high academics, because St. Augustine being a private school, your academics got to be a lot higher than going into a state school.
So this is interesting, right? And a lot of people will find this helpful because even if they are looking to get into coaching, understanding that you wear many, many, many hats as you're coming up the coaching ranks, it makes a big difference. And also from an athlete perspective, I had never considered that, you just got to be aware that you don't know who's watching. So you might be up there, for a Boo Williams tournament and you see, big guy. You might be at a Boo Williams tournament for girls basketball and you see a big guy like, man, I might get, he might be able to move a little bit, but he's not even worried about you because you got St. Augustine women's basketball on your shirt, right?
Yes.
As an athlete, you got to be aware that you are always being recruited, always being scouted.
You never, I even tell guys today, you never know who's sitting in the stands. You never know why they're there. They may be there watching their niece cheer. You really don't know. But guess what? A coach is always a coach, and you're constantly recruiting. You're always eyeballing kids. I mean, I would just go to football games just to be watching the game. My nephew played some at Durham Riverside, so I'll just go to a game to watch him. But guess what? I'm constantly recruiting. I'm constantly looking for that next player. Whether it be a JV player. I said, okay, this kid's okay. He's a 10th grader. Hey, coach, who's this kid right here? Just tell me a little bit about him. Because guess what? Now I'll take that to the football coach at St. Albans and say, look, you might want to put this kid on your watch list just in case, because there's no telling. He's a little small right now, but you don't know how. Boys don't stop growing till they're 21, so you don't know how big this kid's really gonna be. So you might want to put him on your watch list and eyeball.
But that's the title of the show. How tall will they be? We don't know, right? We don't know. I don't know how tall they're going to be. What years were you at St. Augustine?
2014 to 2018.
So that's relatively recently.
Yes.
And that's right before the switch that we've seen where NIL and unlimited transfers are available, right? So you were recruited in the late 80s. You played in the 80s and early 90s. You coached from the early 90s all the way through the 2000s and 2010s. Now you have NIL. Now you have unlimited transfer. What change did you see when that came into play?
Let me say, when they brought out NIL, I wonder how much money I could have made back in the 80s. I'm going to say that one. I'm going to say that part first. I wonder how much money I could have made. What type of NIL deal could I've cut for playing back then? But that's a different topic.
Well, that's the next podcast. That's the next podcast.
But at St. Augustine, they were just starting to talk about the transfer portal.
Okay.
It was, not out in public, but as far as in the coaches' circle, it was being talked about. Everybody was talking about it, trying to figure out, okay, the portal. We know this portal's coming. How can we maneuver the portal and recruit? Especially looking at small Division II school. How can we go out and get players from here in this portal that's about that, where you have access to a multitude of talent? Now, how do we still go after high school kids, or do we just get kids right out the portal? And back then in the CIAA, you had a lot of people coming from Division I dropping down to Division II, where you can play. So how you going to go out? How you going to recruit a high school kid? You want that high school kid, but you can go get an older person to play, who's already had playing time. The body's already developed. So how did you handle that? And that was the question. That's the discussion we were having, especially that interim year. We're having discussions about that, about how to maneuver through that. And I was talking to the men's coach about that a lot, how to maneuver around that whole circle.
So what answer did you come to? Because that is a big thing now, where if you're a high school senior, high school junior, and you might be gifted, right, in that pre-transfer portal, pre-NIL time, you might be looked at by a UNC or an NC State. But NC State's got to win now, right? And they can go get a 23, 22, 21-year-old that's been in college for 3 years, 4 years, sometimes 5 years. And as you mentioned, develop weightlifting, understanding concepts, understanding time management, versus just a really good, smart 17, 18-year-old that now is having to truly consider a different type of school than they would have considered before.
As a college coach, this is my philosophy on it. You still have to go out and recruit those high school kids, because even if whatever school they go to, everything's built off relationships. They may go to a UNC or out of the state, anywhere. They may go to California, they may go to Oregon or somewhere, but they might want to come back home. And guess what they're going to remember? Now, this is without NIL right now. They're most likely going to remember that coach that recruited them back in high school. Who they do, that coach went out and developed a relationship with them. And that's what they want. Because it's about, with young adults nowadays, because I'm still a high school teacher. It's about developing relationships with you. And I think they like being around people who they still have a relationship with, they can sit down and talk to and communicate with and voice their opinions, and someone who's going to sit down and listen to them. And they'd rather go play for someone like that than go somewhere else. Of course, now when you throw NIL in, now it's talking about a little bit of money. Well, a lot of money.
Well, let's get into that. So I'm going to let's preface this by saying, please don't name any names, but you've been in this for a long time. So let me hear your take and your stories of pre-legal NIL, back when NIL was in, McDonald's bags and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then we'll get into NIL today.
Going from I'm gonna say a handshake,
Okay.
a nice handshake, or hey, that's what it was. It was, hey, good job. There you go. From that going on to hey, you need to get you a work study job.
Okay.
Work study. We got
Work study. Got
work
you.
study, work study. Got to get you a job or get you a summer job at a business somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. I think they've constantly been going on. There's nothing new. I think in college athletics, it's just found a way around it now. Found a way around it to make it legal to do
Okay.
things now. But things have been
Mm-hmm.
going. I mean, things have been going in sports.
But now it's out in the open, right? And
Yeah,
it is somewhat legalized. Not somewhat, it is legalized. Let's not say
yeah,
somewhat. It
it
is
is.
legal.
It is.
How has it impacted high school athletes first? Let's talk about that, because in North Carolina now, both public and private schools can have NIL deals. So how have you seen it already have an impact? How do you foresee that impacting high school sports? And this is just a question to North Carolina, but there's other states that have NIL, and
Yeah.
odds are all 50 states are going to adopt some sort of NIL structure pretty soon.
Well, I think it has taken the true amateurism out of high school sports. It took amateurism and college. This is my personal opinion. It took amateurism from college sports, where you had a young person, a young adult, they would have to work hard because they knew possibly they wanted to go play a professional sport, whether it be the NFL or in the NBA. And now, of course, because I was in college, they didn't have the WNBA.
Mm-hmm.
All the young ladies had to go overseas. When I coached,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of ladies had to go overseas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and now it's trickle down to high school, where they're taking that amateur, where those kids are used to working and grinding out on a daily basis. Now it's like, oh, I can go get paid now. You know, especially when they announced it for high school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what? I mean, you don't want to take that newborn child and just throw cash stuff at them like, oh, here's all this materialistic things, and that's the way it is. Because I think it changed their mindset. I ain't got to be here. I'm not getting I'm not getting a deal here. I go over here. I can jump in the high school transfer portal and go where I want
Yeah.
to go to.
Mm-hmm.
I go over here because they got a better deal, especially when private schools were able to do it and the public schools were not.
Mm-hmm.
Now both are able to do it. So that changed that changed your mindset, because a lot of kids will, and people may not say it, but people whisper in parents' ear, "Hey, you bring your child over here, and we can get your child paid." And of course, parents need to figure out who they're listening to. Also, they need to know who are they listening, who are they getting their advice from. But to
Let's get
take your
deeper
child,
into that, right? That's we're here to educate. This podcast again is for the people who are on those long rides to the Tidewater area, long rides to Myrtle Beach, and want to get some real advice. Who do you listen to? Who would you recommend that a parent listen to? Let's say you've got a very talented sophomore athlete, and people are starting to come to you and say, hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars to come to this school or go on, play on this team or whatever. Well, number one, is that bad? And number two, who do you listen to? Where do you get your advice from?
that's the tough part about when it came down to high school, because it's pretty much, it could turn into a wild west thing in high school now. That's it could turn to it. It could be a free fall. Of course, you always want to have some legal help on your side, a lawyer that understands contracts and everything, what's going on with that. But if you have a real good high school coach, just go to the high school head coach and talk to him and say, look, here's some things, some words that I'm getting, some word, and I'm getting people coming to approach my child, people coming to talk to me about it. Go to the high school coach. And if you have a real good high school coach, they've done their research on what's going on there. And they'll say, look, here are some people you might need to talk to. They may recommend that you talk to an agent just in case. because an agent understands what's going on. That's literally that's where we're going right now with high school sports. The the college stuff is trickling down to the high school.
Okay.
Right? It's trickling down to high school. And I mean, in all my years, I would have never thought it would have got to this point as far as high school. But you want to listen, you want to talk, someone that understands contracts to look over things for you and get some good advice before you make a rash decision and do something.
But you mentioned go to your high school coach if you got a good high school coach. But let's say that I'm at school, the blue school, right? And that's my neighborhood school, and I've been growing up in the blue school area. And now the green school is coming to me and say, look, you're really good. We'll give you, I don't know, X amount of dollars to come play. Are you telling me I should go to my blue school coach and say, hey, the green school is offering me this much money?
No.
What do you think the deal is?
I understand. Yeah. Then the high school coach most likely will say, look, that you want, of course, the high school coach wants you to stay there. But now the parent has to make a decision because the parent literally is always in control when it comes out to it, because that parent, they have parental rights over that child, right? That I mean, the high school coach can say what he wants to sometimes, but if that parent gets information, and of course, I say this, saying that going into, it depends on the family structure also, okay? Because if the family's doing, two parent household, two incomes, you're in a different scenario than you are with a possible single mom or single dad raising a child. Two different types of scenarios, okay? So, but if you go, hopefully there may be some high school coach that may not do their research on it, but hopefully they are. I think at the larger schools, especially North Carolina, a lot of them are doing their research and they understand what's going on, especially with the athletic association saying, look, here's what we're going to do. And then with the state of North Carolina stepping in and say, here's how we want to control this. So everybody's trying to get their hand on it and get a control of it. But, when you got somebody coming into you and throwing a couple $1,000s in your face, and you're a young adult, and you may not even have a job, I've never worked a job, but all you know is I like to have that pair of Jordans. The only way for me to get that pair of Jordans or put food on the table for my mom or my dad is we need to go over here to this school because here's what they're offering me. Because bottom line is, a lot of young adults, they feel like they need to help take care of the family. All right, they have to take care of that, and help, especially single mom. And there are a lot of single moms that are with athletic sons, and they do a great job. But a young man understands, probably want to talk with that. I need to take care of my mom. I need to bring money to the house. We got bills, so the lights won't get cut off. So we have food on the table. My little brothers and sisters need to be, they can't go to bed hungry. So that has a heavy influence over everything.
That's a real good point. We're talking about this from a school perspective, like the school that you go to, your high school. But what about club teams, right? So you've coached men's basketball, women's basketball, football. You've been involved in baseball. So all of these sports have enormous club elements, AAU, travel, and stuff like that. And now there's always been, green handshakes when it comes to those activities. But now it's just out in the open, right? You can sign contracts. You can sign NIL agreements with shoe companies, with apparel, other apparel companies, with whoever you want. And, at this point, teams can just pay you directly. So how much weight do you put on the club element of your sport as it relates to getting to the next level versus really prioritizing the high school team that you play with?
Well, you're digging deep in this one.
That's the point of the podcast. It's the point of the show.
Here's my thing with AAU. It's get from where it started out. I kind of, starting back in the 90s, I kind of saw it grow, AAU grow, especially mainly basketball, of course, where you had kids, you had the strongest ones on one team, the strongest players in your area. Let's say, I'm say Durham, you might have the strongest 10 to 12 kids on one team playing, to the point now where some things have gotten watered down. We have, you go from one strong team to 25 strong teams in one city, where it's watered down. Now everybody's pulling, trying to pull kids to help their team out. And a lot of kids get some misinformation
Okay.
or promise things like, hey, we're going to take care of you. And they're really not going to take care of you. It really ends up costing them. They just want to get you on their team. And that happens a lot. That happens in multiple cities. I've coached AAU.
Okay.
I've worked along AAU organizations. And it's brutal. Where you got a kid, they might want to play with the buddies, the hometown buddies, but they're getting pulled to go to South Carolina, Tennessee, Charlotte, the larger cities to network more. Mm-hmm. And people they may have someone who's literally driving them back and forth to these places in hopes that they make it to college. That's the goal. Because majority of kids play AAU to make it to college. Now there's some who just doing it for recreation, but the majority of kids are looking to go to college. They're looking at being seen by coaches. All right. But sometimes that does not happen. They're not playing, they're going to events and they're not playing in front of coaches, in front of college coaches. And the parents are being told, hey, we can go here, we're going to go there. Well, if it's not within the calendar window, they're not going anywhere because no coaches are out right now. And that's being told to parents. And parents don't really know because some of them are not educated to do that.
I would say most are not educated. So when you say calendar, first, what calendar are you talking about? And number two, where could parents go to find this calendar or these calendars so that they know that they're not being taken advantage of?
So talking about the NCAA recruiting calendar and all, they can go to ncaa.org, or just put an NCAA recruiting calendar. And of course, it'll pull up on the ncaa.org's website, and you can go through and you can look at the years. You can look at FBS or FCS football. You can pull up Division I, Division II recruiting, and it'll highlight what the quiet period is, what a contact period is, what a live period is. And you'll know when coaches when they're out and about. And you'll know look, why are we playing this tournament here? I'm use AAU for an example. Mm-hmm. Why are we playing this AAU tournament and there are no coaches going to be here? Well, if the coach says, well, look, we just need a tournament to fine tune because next week we're going to a NCAA sanctioned event where coaches are going to be there. All right, we need to get them ready so we can go there. So we have a good showing. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're playing a non-sanctioned event and it's a local event and the following week you're not going anywhere or you're not getting ready, why are you doing this? Because here's what I've always told people that ask me about AAU. If you're not playing in front of college coaches, you're playing rec ball. You're spending your money. You're going places, putting gas in your car, spending money for hotels, spending money on food, and your child's not being seen. You're playing rec ball. You're wasting your time. Now, if you want to play rec ball, there's no problem. Go and play for a church league. There's no problem playing for athletic association or local athletic association. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But if they want to get looked at and get recruited, they have to play in front of college coaches to be safe.
This is why we have the show. This is the advice. Make sure that you are looking at the calendar and lining that up with whatever your team is doing.
Yes.
Because Dick's Sporting Goods takes your money either way.
Oh, yes.
They will absolutely allow you to buy all the arm sleeves and headbands and towels and everything else, no matter where you're going. But if you're going to make the most of it, make sure you're doing it in front of the people who can make decisions that'll benefit you. Yes. For sure. And ncaa.org, look up the recruiting calendar, please, so that we are not making bad decisions. Maybe you'll make some memories because you get to go to Las Vegas, but it'll just be you and a bunch of gamblers. Ain't no coaches out there because of the dead period.
Been up and down the road with my daughter, up and down the road. And, number one thing, I have a great nephew who's played. He's a 6'5" basketball player, shooting guard. Mm-hmm. First thing I tell him, let me see your schedule. Let me see the coach. Let me see the schedule. If it's not, and I go through each event. And if things don't line up, you're wasting your time.
That is really invaluable advice. It really is. So you mentioned your daughter, and you also have a son that's a senior. So let's talk about recruiting today as a parent. We've talked about it as you in high school going to college. We've talked about it where you were a high school coach helping people get to college. We talked about it where you're a college coach recruiting people directly. Now let's talk about it from a parent's perspective. What has been your experience in this specific time period, and also compare that to previous time periods.
Nowadays, I mean, I've been up and down the road with my daughter. My daughter's probably like 5'1", 5'2". She's a little short point guard. So a lot of Division III schools are looking at her. But the main thing I did emphasize, now I'll tell this any parent, just stay on your child for academics, because sometimes it's not all about going to school for athletics. Make sure your child can get enrolled in that school, because bottom line, it's going to come down to that. And now without the ACT or SAT, guess what? You gotta have the high GPA. And they're looking at those classes. So as a parent, here's one thing I did. I control my daughter's schedule and I control my son's schedule as far as the high school. I manage their schedule, make sure, of course, I know the graduation requirements, and I made sure they were in proper classes as far as academically, and someone that could push them academically. And then so that I know that, because the academic part, it actually carries on to the athletic field or the athletic court, because you can't do things in the classroom. This as a coach, this coach / parent, because I'm always in coaching mode. I'm always in that coaching mode. It carries over for what you need to know as far as, okay, if you're not handling things academically, how are we going to handle things athletically? And and the more I work with my own children, I pick them up even more. I have to make sure they push academic, because I want them to be able to get to school. I want them to be able to get to the school that, whether you play sports or not, you can go to, hey, I already got admitted. Hey, coach, I was admitted to your school already. And the coach like, wait a minute, how do you get, because most of the time a coach will take that, they'll take that pitch and get you down there. I've already got admitted. And that's what I found out as a parent. I've been up and down the road to Division III schools with my daughter. And when they came back, and I tried to explain to her, look, Division III, they don't offer scholarship money. They don't give scholarship money. You're on academic or you're on student loans. Mm-hmm. Well, one school, I'm not going to name it, but I had 30,000 reasons to tell her not to go there.
Okay.
So that's from a parent. You ask from a parent now. And
yes,
that's literally what I told my daughter, because now you're doing, I call it pay. You're doing pay to play. And I don't have 30,000 reasons to let you go there and play and do that. Go to a state school. Go somewhere where you're going to grow a little bit, and it doesn't cost your parents a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to my son, he grew. He grew. Before high school, he was maybe 5'10". Now he's 6'3". Okay. And of course, he was coming out of COVID. And not playing football his 8th grade year. The main thing I did with him, I said, make sure you get your body in shape. Get your body in shape, put on with a physical, personal trainer to get his body in shape. But he was growing as he was doing this also. But I made sure I emphasized academics to him as a parent. And I would say this to any parent. I say this to parents now. I said, look, make sure you get your child's grades together. So both of my children, my daughter had over 3.5 GPA, and my son has over 4.0 GPA. Both of them took honors AP courses. Okay. So guess what? They can get into a college. I don't think it's a problem getting into a college.
Right. And now, where is your son looking to go? I'm happy that you mentioned D3 as it relates to your daughter, and understanding that that is a viable option, but also understanding that they only do academic scholarships, not athletic scholarships. But all levels are viable levels of sport if that's where you want to go. One of our previous guests mentioned that she chose the school she went to because she wanted to play right away, not necessarily to go to the biggest school possible or the schools on TV the most. I want to go where I'm going to play, and I want to play all 4 years. But for your son, where does what type of school? I won't have you put names out if you don't want to, but what type of school is he interested in? And what type of school do you think he would be a good fit for after your 30 years of, coaching and teaching experience?
Now, I'm going to admit this. I'm tough on college coaches.
Surprising. Real surprising. Oh, man.
I listen to everything they say, because I'm a firm believer that if you tell a kid something, you hold your word to them. That's something I learned when I was in college. That's something I learned coaching high school. Because a lot of kids are a little gullible to things and they don't understand. But for him, it talked to him, and he and I have been talking for the last 3 or 4 years about this. And I told him that go somewhere where you can play. You may not play your first year. You may have to redshirt a year. You may have to sit a year. But there's nothing wrong with that. Nowadays, a lot of young people have a situation with that. They want to play right now. But guess what? You have the transfer portal. You have older kids who have been around that even a walk-on that may be better than you. And you may be the best player at your school, but guess what? They're the best player at their school also. So I've told them, look, go somewhere where you can play. You might have to sit a year. You might have to sit 2 years. It's okay. It's a learning curve. It'll make you a better man. Because now you got to learn how to be patient. And you're going to see, are you going to persevere through this? Or you just going to say, forget it. I don't know. Here you go. I want to transfer. I'm not
Did you
playing.
just use the words patience and perseverance in 2025? Does that still
Yes, I did.
That's still okay. All right. Fair enough. Keep going.
Yes, I did just say.
No, just say because as you mentioned, we've talked in the podcast so far, in the episode so far, just about people transferring not only in college but in high school. They'll go to 5 different high schools in 4 years. There's a lot of people just transferring. They'll transfer club teams every week. Yeah. So, the points of perseverance and patience still being valuable, I think, are important. I think that's an important thing.
And as a parent, and I would say this to other parents, is it more about the athletics, or is it about your child going to get a good education? Which one's more important to you? To me, it's about my child getting a good education, going to a good university, a good quality education, get a quality college degree, and mentored by nice, good, right coaches that are going to help continue to develop him. Because guess what? He goes to college. I got to let him go. I'm still there, but now I have to trust him in the hands of other men. Okay? Mm-hmm. I mean, just like my dad had let me go. He dropped me off, gave me $20 back. This back in the 80s now. This back in the I'm letting everybody know this is back in the 80s. That was the
original NIL. That's the original NIL.
Hey, gave me $20, and did not have a car. And that was it. And they had to trust me with those men to helping me develop as a man. And I would do the same thing with my child. Look, that's why I listen to coach. I listen to what coaches say, and I watch what they do. So that's what I'm talking to my son about right now. Look, and just go somewhere where you can talk to the coach and have a conversation. You can have a conversation with the coach, and he can continue to develop you. But also, a coach told me years ago, and I tell kids, if the school's not showing any love, why are you going there? Why are you going there? If you want, I want to go to school A so bad. Oh, I want to go. Have they made contact with you? So why do you want to go there? Now, these conversations I have with my son, those things that you need to have conversation with your child about. So when they go to college, they'll have their priorities together and they'll understand what's important. Is it more important for me to step on the field? What you want them to do? That's great. Or do you want them, or would you rather see them walk across that stage with that college degree in their hand?
I think that's something that we can end right there, right? That's a really good question. And I think this conversation has been not only enlightening, but also challenging to athletes and parents to really be real about what do you want, right? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to do it? Are you educating yourself properly? So, Coach Richmond, I want to say thank you for being on this episode. Where can the people get in touch with you if they have more questions?
You can get me at Twitter at Coach Art Rich, Coach Art Rich, and follow me on there.
Okay. Well, Coach Richmond, thank you again for being on. This has been another episode of How Tall Will They Be? And if you notice, we didn't even try to answer that question because you can't. We'll see you next episode.